Okay, so today I will be talking about the plasma membrane. So we will be focusing on some main components of it, of like the functions it has, and some other things like the lipid bilayer, which is right up there. We'll be also focusing on some of the proteins, like the integral proteins. We will also be talking about the polar hydrophilic heads and their tails that they have as well, and a lot about phospholipids, so that you'll be able to pass this test. Okay, so I'll be defining you what a plasma membrane is. So a plasma membrane is a microscopic membrane of lipids and proteins that forms the external boundary of cytoplasm of a cell and regulates the passage of molecules in and out of cytoplasm. Now, in a little bit more specific terms, the plasma membrane does a lot for the cell. So, life depends on cells, like those floating cells you see below, and the structure and function of the cells rely on the membrane. Some of the following major functions are varying the content of cells to accommodate in its function, regulating what enters and exits the cell, and allowing the cell to interact with other cells. So it encloses all the content cells, it's selective permeable as well, and basically it's like a passageway. Think of like a gate, a huge gate, and just imagine it that it allows any material to enter or leave the cell, but it has to go through that gate. So, the plasma membrane is also the structure that, regulates what enters and leaves. So, that's mainly what you really need to know for a plasma membrane, for like the major functions of it, and how you would describe what a plasma membrane is and what it does. Now we'll begin talking about the protein parts of the plasma membrane. So, proteins give each plasma membrane its distinct character and help determine its function. Sorry, I'm really sick right now, so I'm sorry if this audio quality is terrible. So now we'll get into like the two specific types of proteins that are really in here. So the major ones we're focusing on are integral membrane proteins and receptor proteins. So receptor proteins in the plasma membrane have two jobs. Some of these receptors recognize heat and other non-molecular signals, and these receptors respond only to specific signal molecules. Now these ones are kind of like the top. Wait, no, never mind. These are the ones on the left. Sorry, my bad. My notes are getting me up. So as you can see how the receptors are there, and some hormones and the extracellular fluid. So then the first step is like the hormone binds the receptor. The hormone binding activates the receptor, changing its shape, and then the activated receptor stimulates a response in the cell. So that's kind of the basis of that. And then for the integral membrane protein, there's not really good photo to describe how it is, but it creates transport tunnels in between all of this stuff happening, and I'll tell you kind of what it's creating transport tunnels through later. But basically, you can think of the transport channels as tunnels. Like, you wouldn't be able to get over a mountain by walking; it'd be really difficult. But through that tunnel, you can now. So those are kind of the major functions of the proteins. And then we'll have one more section, which will kind of finish up. It'll probably be the longest, but then we'll kind of finish up wrapping up the cell membrane. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the fourth and final part of the cell membrane that we will be focused on, which will be like the phospholipid bilayer and the hydrophobic and hydrophilic heads and tails. So, water plays a very important role in this formation of the lipid bilayer. In a lipid bilayer, the hydrophilic heads face toward water, and the hydrophobic tails face away from water. And I'll get into a little bit more depth about that. So the hydrophilic heads interacts with polar molecules. This allows the passage of proteins, water, and many other molecules to go through and in and out of the cell. If the hydrophobic heads were present instead of hydrophilic, the lipid's outer and inner layer would avoid contact with polar groups and hinder the interaction of transmembrane protein within them. Now, on the other hand, the hydrophobic tails are the exact opposite. There is no attractive interaction between the fatty acid tails and the H2O molecules. So, which means that a plasma membrane, in general, just the plasma membrane is just said to be semi-permeable because it allows the passage of some of these solutions and not others. So something other than water, like oil, would maybe not transfer as well as water would be able to. So it's only be semi-permeable. Now what here we were talking about was just a phospholipid, was that the little thing circled there. Now this whole bigger picture is what we call a phospholipid bilayer, which just basically means there's a lot more of them, and that there's two tails connected to every head. So instead of just one tail and one head. So that makes sense. So I have covered everything you will need now to be able to pass the test. I'm sorry for being sick and the audio quality not being good, but I hope you found this information useful.